Hey guys, Kier here, and before the video even starts, I just want to say that if you've seen My Hero Academia at all, then you know what Endeavor did to his family. And since that isn't something I should be taking lightly, I'll try and keep this like a more serious tone, which is just something I wanted to mention really quickly. But anyways, you already saw the title, you know what the video is, so let's just get into it. I'm gonna be separating this into 3 different parts, with his family, his hero life, and then he himself, to help me have this in a more organized fashion. Because otherwise I just have this like be all over the place, and it probably will be all over the place, but this is to help me be a bit more organized with, how this video works out. Also, there will be manga spoilers from the most recent arc, but I'll mention it beforehand, so you won't be spoiled if you've only watched the anime. But anyways, let's actually get to this analysis part. Near the beginning of the series, when we're introduced to Endeavor, he's portrayed as a much more evil and cruel person than he is nowadays. And even before the whole backstory we get with the Todoroki household, you can still kind of guess that he wasn't like the best father, let's say, as you can see how any of the family members you meet they all just hate Endeavor. I mean, it makes sense that they hate him, and they probably should hate him considering what he did. And it's even to the point that his own son wouldn't use half of his quirk for the simple purpose that he thinks of his father whenever he does it. But even since back then, Endeavor was always a more thematically important character, as the whole theme of my hero is what makes a hero, and he fits perfectly with him, as that's his main struggle is after he becomes number 1, and possibly even before that, we see him struggle to figure out what it means to be a hero. He even asks All Might, who he used to hate, what does it mean to be number 1? What does it mean to be the symbol of peace? He even asks him, what is the symbol of peace? Because he doesn't know what he's supposed to do once he's at number 1. He had tried achieving it for so long. And asking a question as simple as that may not seem as important or as big, but when you consider who Endeavor is, who he did what he did to his family the whole time, just to be number 1, for him to ask that to All Might, who, as I already said, he hates, is a testament to how badly or how confused he is to what the symbol of peace is. You have to remember how really devoted he was to trying to be number 1 one way or another. So much so that he even bought out a whole family, married one of the people, all for the sake of having a quirk marriage, which is already considered taboo. He went through all of that just to have a child of a perfect quirk who he thought would be able to surpass All Might, which is ridiculous because at best he would have had to wait around 18 years or more, because that's assuming that this child would have been the first one, and that at the age of 18, which is most likely the age that they're allowed to become heroes, he becomes the number 1 hero, which is basically impossible. And it's ironic too, because he did all of that just to have someone else become the number 1 hero, even though he was so determined to do it. And it becomes even more ironic when you see in one of the panels or pages he's training Todoroki, you see him tell him, don't run away from me, don't run away from yourself, even though he's basically running away from himself and the whole goal of becoming number 1 by having someone else do it for him. This is probably because he got so lost in the goal and so focused on the goal of becoming number 1 that he eventually got distracted. And instead of it being a goal to become number 1, it was just a goal to surpass All Might, or to see All Might fall, basically. And if you think about it, the same feeling he had when the reason he got number 1 hero wasn't because he did some great accomplishment, but it was because All Might actually had to retire. He probably would have felt that same feeling if his whole his whole work with Todoroki or one of his children would have actually worked. I think he would have felt dissatisfied because he didn't do anything to make it better. He didn't change anything. He just survived long enough, and eventually All Might did something so great he had to retire. Another thing about him and his relationship with other heroes I found really interesting was how he feels about Hawks. When Endeavor and Hawks were discussing, I think it was the rumors about Nomu right before the Hood vs Endeavor fight, I found it really interesting that when Hawks was saying that he just doesn't want to be number 1 hero, he just wants to everything he wanted to be lowered down because you get more freedom, you get to be more calm and all that. It really annoyed him because Endeavor worked so hard to be number 1 that when he sees someone else with a very different opinion who kind of looked at wouldn't want to be number 1, it really annoys him because he was so focused on that goal, someone else just doesn't think the same as him. There's also a really subtle detail I want to mention about Hawks and his time with Endeavor. You see him say his ideal life is just him putting in a few patrols, saying, oh, there's no trouble today, and just sleeping. He wants a world where if there was anything a hero had to kill, it was time. And the panel after that, you see like Endeavor looking away, kind of like in thought. That panel has a lot of possible interpretations, right? One of the ways you can like think of what that panel is supposed to mean is that in theory that should be the kind of world any hero should hope for, right? A world where they don't even have to have that job, a world where they just don't do anything. But Endeavor, his goal is just to be number one, a goal that he needs more chaos or anything of that to happen, especially considering how his approval rating is so low, especially compared to other heroes that have really high approval ratings like All Might or Hawk. So he can maybe now that he has that first place, he feels bad, or not he feels bad, but he might like change his opinion on that, and maybe he thinks that is the right world. But anyways, more as to like lighten up the topic, because I don't want to keep this like so, not focused, but very serious the whole time. I'm going to talk about other things that aren't like his hero life and all of that, so, which for the next part is going to be like how his name is actually a pretty cool part about his character and other stuff. And then I might get back to it. I don't know. I have points here, but I'm also free flowing and just like saying stuff that comes to mind at the same time. So, yeah. Anyway, so as I mentioned, his name being Endeavor, which literally means to try hard to achieve something, which is what he does for the whole series. And even before the series even starts, he tried very hard to become number one way or another. And his name goes even further, because since not only does it have a meaning in English, but also in his Japanese name. So if you've seen the series, you know his Japanese name is Enji Todoroki. And Enji in Japanese is, well, at least his name is written with two characters. The first one being for flame, and the other one being for rule or govern. So basically his first name in Japanese is literally like governing fire or governing flame, which kind of encompasses part of his character, as he obviously has to do with fire and flames. But also, when you consider like it means rule or govern, you could also say he like ruled or governed his family. Or since he's number one, and that generally the person that's in number one is like a governing figure in the family, or just in anything really, which is a cool detail to add whenever an author decides to add meaning all the way to their name. It's pretty cool. One thing I did mention before that I wanted to add on to now is how much of a thematically important character he is to the series, as there's many different ways you can interpret his character, one of which being that he's a symbol of how hard work and persistence is eventually gonna make you get to the top. And that's basically what happened for him. He survived and he persevered, and that eventually got him the end result of becoming the number one hero in the nation. And although it wasn't by his fair means, it did work. Another way you can interpret his character is by saying that too much hard work and dedication can just be problematic, because as you can see by what happened with his family, he got so dedicated into that goal. He put so much quote-unquote hard work into it that it eventually led to hurt his family, and he did what he did to his family. So it's really two different, very opposite ways to interpret his character. It really depends on how you want to see it and how deep you want to go into it. I don't really choose, because it can really be up to both. It just really depends on the person. You can even see Hawks mentioned, I'm pretty sure, a bit before the Endeavor vs. Nomu chapters. Hawks notes that when All Might was number one, Endeavor was the only one actually trying to surpass him. Whether or not it be in the best way, he was still trying to surpass him. Everyone else was just watching or trying to get number 2 or number 3, where Endeavor was the only one that persistently tried to get number 1 and be the best. Which you can say adds on to his whole character of being very hardworking and one of the more hardworking heroes out there. As even when the goal seemed impossible, the goal being, surpassing All Might, he still went and tried and did it. He became the only person to even try. And by doing all of that, he eventually became number 1 hero. And also, I'm pretty sure he even states that that wasn't the way he wanted to become number 1 hero. It just happened to be. So you can even see, although he was that determined, he still wanted to have the satisfaction, I did this and that's why I'm number 1 hero. Not because All Might did this, I became number 1 hero. Also, I think one thing I want to say is some people might think, oh, Endeavor, he isn't being as good of a number one hero and all that because, he's not being as simple a piece or anything. But in the times that he's at, it's very difficult for him to even try to be, symbol of peace when he gets challenge after challenge. A few days after he becomes number one, well, first of all, he has to deal with the whole pressure becoming number one and all the eyes looking on him. Then he gets the whole Nomu thing. Then later on in the manga, people who read the manga know all the chaotic events that happen. He hasn't really had, let's say, a good go or a good start to being able to be number one hero. He's done the best he possibly can for his start. He did everything. He even had the pose after the Nomu, which is with his opposite hand of what All Might did, probably to symbolize that he's not trying to be another All Might. He's trying to be a better All Might, or at least a good, suitable first place. So much so that you can even make the claim that with all this, like all these challenges, he gets challenge after challenge, and he rises up every time. You could say he's had a much harder go at it of being number one than All Might ever would have had, and All Might ever had. Because at least in the anime, all we see is Endeavor fight Nomu, that one Nomu, which isn't even the strongest Nomu. Keep in mind that the Hood was the strongest Nomu. And then we see him fight All for One, which, to be fair, is probably the strongest enemy we've seen in the series. But that's it. We haven't seen him do anything else. On the contrary, Endeavor had to basically participate in a war. Everything the League of Villains did in the manga, and probably a lot more later on. So you could even basically what I'm trying to say, you can argue Endeavor's had a rougher time than All Might, and he's eventually probably gonna be a better hero when it comes to like everything else, because he's protecting the country pretty well for his situation. And I know I keep going back to this whole Nomu, but I think it's some people don't realize how much of an impact Nomu and Endeavor's whole fight with that Nomu had on his character. Not only did it establish that he was the strongest hero, it gave him a time to shine. It told his whole pose afterwards basically was saying what I mentioned earlier, and just the Nomu left a permanent scar on his face, just like a permanent scar emotionally and mentally instead of physically he left on his family with the things he did. He also acknowledges that this Nomu is a past version of him. I really don't see that, but he himself mentions it. So, and with his wife and Natsu on the screen earlier, they make it clear that the old Endeavor would have run away or he was something else. The new Endeavor is trying to rise up, defeat the odds, and not give up, which even further exemplifies his growth and his change and his attempt to maybe not get forgiveness, but make his situation better and feel better about what he did. Because I think he knows he'll never be forgiven. So basically, Endeavor is the tale of a tragic hero who will never be forgiven for his past actions, but will try to make up for them with phenomenal actions. Anyways, guys, that's the video. Feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Let me know what you thought down below. I really took a whole week to do this video, mainly because I really couldn't use my computer for reasons. But aside from that, as I said, let me know what you thought down below. And let me know if I also, if you think I was reaching with some of this, if you think I missed something, I might make a part 2, as I didn't really analyze anything, if at all, from the manga. And, Endeavor's character is still getting adapted, even with each passing chapter, so I don't really want to say this is a complete analysis. I might make a part 2, I'm still deciding. But, yeah, peace.